give it a second. Alright, we are recording the interview of Rick Perales. This interview is being conducted by Adrian Hill from the Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. The interview is being recorded at Wright State University Veteran Military Center in Dayton, Ohio. It is about 3 p.m. on February 9th, 2014. Alright, Rick, when and where were you born?
I was born in Selma, Alabama in 1959.
Okay, who were your parents and what were their occupations?
Herb and Juanita Perales. Herb was a lifelong veteran, Air Force, and my mom, Juanita, worked civil servant in accounting for the military, and was a house mother, of course.
Okay. So, do you have any siblings?
4 brothers, all served.
They all served. What branches?
I was number 2. Number 1 served in the Air Force, a retired lieutenant colonel. Then me. My next brother served in the Air Force, retired lieutenant colonel. Next brother is still a reserve captain, nurse in the Air Force, Purple Heart recipient. And the last one served as a Korean linguist, and he was enlisted, and he's now out.
Okay. Are there any, your parents, I'm sorry, I don't think I asked, did your parents serve, either of them?
My dad, yeah, he was retired, lifelong.
Okay.
Retired Senior Master Sergeant.
Okay, so what were you doing before the service then?
Before I joined? High school.
Okay.
So I went from high school to Auburn University, high school in Arizona, went to Auburn University, got in engineering, got in the ROTC program, was commissioned out of ROTC, and started my service.
Okay, and you picked the Air Force. Why is that?
My dad was Air Force. That was the only thing I knew and the only thing I cared about. I loved the Air Force.
So did you grow up? You grew up on military bases?
All over.
Yeah.
Transferred, so born at Craig Air Force Base, Selma, Alabama. Dad was a T-33 maintenance personnel. Went to MacDill after that. Then he went to Tucson where he retired, and he was a maintenance mechanic on A-10s, I believe. And I grew up. I did junior high and high school there, and so yeah, Air Force was the only way for me. But my 2 youngest brothers ended up going Army, so you never know.
Okay. Yeah. Why? So was it pretty much installed in your head by growing up that it was always going to be you were joining the military?
I think a couple things. I think one thing is that that's all I knew. The other thing is it's just it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing, and as I step away from that and I get older, I so recognize how it was the right thing to do. Now, whether I served my career there or a handful of years, I didn't know that, but I knew when I got in, when I was in ROTC, that it was a love. It's something I want to do for the country, and it made me who I am today.
Okay. Do you think that, did you ever go to basic training, or was it straight ROTC
No,
to?
It was officer training.
Okay. So, can you kind of describe maybe, because I know Auburn, you were doing ROTC, so you were kind of used to the military lifestyle, and obviously your whole life you grew up with it. Was there any, kind of changes you saw once you actually got in the military, like, what it was like? Do you remember anything kind of coming at you at all? Or did you already know what it was going to be?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that, I think people that get into military that hadn't been before as dependents, possibly the movements and just the flexibility. But for me, I'd move, I don't know how many times as a kid. I loved the military. I was an engineer. I loved what I was potentially going to do. I don't know that there was a whole lot that surprised me along the way. I went through ROTC fine. I think, at Auburn we have a big detachment. I ended up being a vice wing commander. Went through my training well, and started in the space program as a civil engineer, and who could ask for more as a second lieutenant?
Yeah. You said you picked civil engineering, and that's what your degree was in?
Yes, something similar to civil engineering. It was called construction management in the School of Architecture, but it was a cross between civil engineering and architecture.
Oh, okay. So, kind of describe to me maybe what OCS was like then? Because you did ROTC.
No, it wasn't OCS. It was.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Because I went through ROTC,
Right.
which is a summer training,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at McConnell Air Force Base. It was a good time. I got to meet with a lot of others. It was that time where the commitment was really going to happen after
Right.
after that, and I loved it before and I loved it after. It was difficult. Not as difficult as say going through the academy or some, excuse me, our basic training, because I think it was only a total of 4 weeks. But they try to get 4 weeks out of you to let you know that this is about the military and service and not about you. And so I think there were a lot of my peers there that weren't as familiar with the military, that it was kind of a shock to them. Some were very agreeable to going through it, and some maybe not and didn't make it. But I think it was a great test of if you want to go to the next level.
And what year was this of your college that made this?
End of my sophomore year, before
Okay.
junior year.
Okay. So do you remember what that was like? Maybe, kind of signing it. You're
Yeah.
signing your contract. Was it anything going?
I
through
didn't
that?
think twice. I remember things about that. I met some good people, some good friends. I enjoyed it. I remember survival. I think we took like a couple weeks of survival, and I caught a water moccasin, and we ate it. So where would you have done that before? We had
Right.
some survival guys with us, the guys that do it for a living, and they just thought, and they wanted the eyeballs out of the moccasin, and it was something that helped me to, you bank it away, but then later on in life, in my career when I was a commander, I pulled it back out, and it was good because you learn what made the young troops tick and what they enjoyed, what not so much, and what you had to do to get to the next level.
Okay. So let's talk about actually getting into the military. So you graduate from Auburn, correct?
Yes.
And then where do you go?
I went to Space Division in Los Angeles. How about that? Second lieutenant, living in Los Angeles. It was a life.
Yeah.
So I got to work on the. It was back in the days where, excuse me, the shuttle program in NASA was defunded, and we were talking about taking classified payloads up in the shuttle for the black world and satellites and whatnot, and so the DoD brought the money to NASA, and so as a second lieutenant in Los Angeles, California, I was flying to Cape Canaveral, Kennedy Space Center, Goddard Space Center, Johnson Space Center. I had milcons at every one of those, and Vandenberg, where we built a whole launch pad that we never used. All as a second lieutenant. Who could ask for more?
Yeah.
Plus, the fringes living in Los Angeles wasn't bad either.
Yeah. You were living on base?
Oh no, I was on a community. They had limited base housing in Los Angeles. Of course, you might understand it's just so expensive. It was down at Fort MacArthur, which is far away. Well, maybe 45 minutes an hour away, but that's for families, because it was much more difficult to bring a family to Los Angeles, still is, than to come as a single officer.
Okay. So what year was this? Well, when you
83 maybe.
83. Okay. So what kind of stuff were you guys working on? As a civil engineer, I was working on the actual launch pad, all the dynamics involved with the launch pad, like Kennedy has. We built the whole thing at Vandenberg. In Johnson, I was doing mostly, as the DoD got into the shuttle program, we had to get the security upgraded, and so I was doing a lot of that. Even as simple as locks I'll tell you, at NASA Kennedy at Launch Pad 39B, we were building, actually in the basement, we were putting in UPS, uninterruptible power sources, to back up the power in case it goes out. They didn't have that before the DoD got involved, but it was a necessity for us when we were putting up classified data and equipment. So some of it was simple, some of it was a little more difficult, and some of it was like Vandenberg was starting from scratch. But again, as a second lieutenant engineer, it was who could ask for more? It was a wonderful life. Okay. Well, so what about after after Los Angeles? How long were you there for?
Oh boy, it's been probably maybe 3 or 4 years, and then I went to Onizuka Air Force Station in San Jose.
Okay.
And I worked on building a classified facility up there. It's a secret facility, and they needed more shielded space. I did that. Great job. Again, I got married back then, and it was high cost of living, tough to raise a family, but it was amazing work. And from there I went to Saudi Arabia, to the desert for my first time, and I helped construct the Saudi Arabian underground command post, multi-billion-dollar, and back then that would have been 86-ish. $1 billion was a lot of money.
Oh, right,
now
yeah.
we throw around $1 billion, but we built 5 underground command posts in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I was traveling in 17 radar towers, so I got to travel in a Toyota with a sidearm all over the country, and it was amazing. Right before the First World War, I was there with my family and shipped the family back.
They were in Saudi Arabia with you?
Before the First War.
Huh.
And which is amazing, actually my second daughter was born in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Which is kind of a fun talking piece. But yeah, we shipped them as the war started up, and then I was transferred to Europe, close by, but I was transferred to Europe as the war started.
Okay. What part of Europe?
I was in the Eifel and Spangdahlem, and currently while the war was going on, we were starting to close down bases in Germany as the wall, in the Cold War backed down, the wall was coming down, and so, I was at Spangdahlem, so I was involved in shutting down bases like Hahn Air Force Base and Wittberg Air Force Base, and somewhere in the middle of all that, actually it's when I was relocated back to stateside to Wright-Patterson, I was shipped to Egypt for Operation Bright Star, and did that for several months. So, and then came back to Wright-Patterson, where I was a commander for the 788th Civil Engineering Squadron. So probably 500 people to operate and maintain the base, and ended up taking an early retirement there and getting into the University of Dayton, where I did the same type thing, engineering and construction, and that led me into politics, where I am now a state representative for the state of Ohio.
Okay. We'll jump into the after military stuff here in a bit. Can you tell me about Egypt? I heard you mention that. What was the operation?
Operation Bright Star. It was we built a 5,000 man, 5,000 person camp. It was just amazing. Working with the Arabs again. Now I'd gotten to know them well and enjoy them and understand the customs in Saudi Arabia. So that wasn't a learning curve for me. But as a civil engineer going into pristine desert, complete desert, and building a camp for 5,000 people. What a challenge. A challenge in just the mechanics of getting it done, but a challenge in leadership and getting it done in time to support the fly-in mission, and all the, so we had all services there, Marine Corps, Navy, Army, and so we supported every endeavor in that 5,000 people, and we had the Chief of Staff come to visit us. I got to escort him around the camp and show him what we were doing, and of course, no matter what service you're in, everyone gets that. The Air Force does it the best. So the Navy and Marine Corps and Army folks would come in, they'd love it. We have cafeteria. Excuse me. For being in the middle of the desert, we had a gym. We had entertainment. We had the mission, but we did the best we could to support and make it as comfortable for the troops as we could. And because we weren't in a forward operating base, we were back. We were able to do much more than of course, if you were right in the middle of the firefights, you could do. So we had warm showers. We did everything. We brought all the resources, and that's part of the training that we had developed at that time, and that would have been in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. We brought everything we had to make sure we could deploy it and get it up and operational as soon as possible, dealing with our Egyptian allies and showing them what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Okay. How long were you in Egypt?
Maybe 3-4 months.
Okay. And was this? Could your family come with you this
Oh,
time?
no. This was out in the desert, right?
Yeah. Can you kind of describe what that was like? Maybe. I mean, I don't know how. Was that the longest time while you were in the Air Force that you had to spend away from family?
In my case, yes.
Okay. Well, was that hard for you?
You know, it's always hard to be away from family. Not so hard to be away from your spouse because we're adults, we get it. And we're the kids don't understand, and I don't even want to indicate that it was difficult because since then you talk to troops that have been deployed 3, 4, 5 times for 6 months or a year on end, and they miss half of their kids growing up.
Right.
So I didn't miss much at all. But it doesn't matter. Whatever you miss, and it's disappointing. So yeah, it was hard. But then the on the other side, back in the '90s when I was out. We didn't have the social media like we have today, so I got to talk a little bit on the phone. We'd go in the middle of the night and make calls, and but even today with Skyping and whatnot, fortunately our troops can talk more to their families than back in my time and back to my father's time when he was in Vietnam, which they couldn't do that at all. They just write letters, and it'd be a month before each other got the letter, and so much has changed between them. And I always had a philosophy on that. There's good and bad with everything. The good is that nowadays that you can communicate better when you're deployed is that you can communicate. But the bad is that you're helpless because back then my mother had to take care of 5 kids when my dad was in Vietnam, and she knew she couldn't depend on Dad. So she learned how to do it herself, and she was very good at it. She evolved. When you're there and you find out that little Johnny has come up with some disease, you're helpless, and it doesn't do a whole lot to tell your wife what to do, to advise what to do, because she's got to figure it out herself.
Right.
So the frustration of being real time but being helpless of today's troops is real. So it's like anything else. There's always good and bad with things. You think back to World War II, World War I, where they might not communicate for months. They wouldn't know someone. A member died in battle, and it would be 3 months, 4 months later before family found out. To today, where they find out pretty quickly if somebody's hurt, if they're going to the hospital. There's pros and cons with being accessible right away with family, because it's very frustrating for the troops where you can't do a whole lot and you're helpless. You can't call somebody and say, hey, could you take care of my kid? Or you got to depend on your spouse. And I talk in terms of male taking care, we're talking to their female spouses, but of course we all know it's completely reversed in many cases with female active duty members in war, depending on their male spouses, and I guess males and males and females nowadays. Whatever it is, it's a family, and it's not so easy anymore. It's better some ways, but it's not a panacea. It's not perfect.
Right. Okay. So communication was just, how did you communicate then?
When I was in a lot of emailing, and then like I said, we go into the comm tent middle of the night and call, which would have been earlier here, sometime during the day. I recall my wife tells this story a lot about me going I finally got the troops into Egypt, because a lot of our troops, I brought 300 troops to Saudi Arabia, and a lot of them were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that would never ever get overseas again. Now with the wars, they ended up getting, whoever stayed in longer got in, but I want them to see a different culture, because I think that's so important for our troops to understand just how well we have it in our culture. So a kid from Iowa, a small town in Iowa, will never understand what it's like to be in a different culture. So I finally got, and there was a high alert when I was there. They were scared or nervous about attacks, terrorist attacks. But we finally got them in to go into Cairo, right? So you would think that we would bring them in kind of clandestine. And, well, no, we got on some big, the Egyptians came with some big tourist buses, and we had, the lights going in front. And, I mean, you might as well put a target on us. I was very nervous as a commander, but we got the troops in there. And I got to tell you, it just made me feel so good, because you see these kids that, like I said, were 18-year-old from middle of Iowa or Oklahoma, never going to be out of this once they get back, and they'd see the poverty. They see the Nile, which was on movies makes it sound glamorous, but they have direct sewer, right in. It's not glamorous. They go into the souks where they'd have a little 9-year-old girl wanting to give them their 2-month-old baby, or not baby, a baby sister. It was all the front, of course.
Yeah.
But they had to learn to say no. I mean, their eyes got that big, but they'll never forget it. I guarantee you that. Or when they went to the pyramids, and the camel guys were there, and I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
The camel guys were there, and they'd say it costs, I don't know how much to get on the camel, right? Take pictures. But then they tell the camels to stand up, and they charge them additional money to get down, because you can't get down off of it. But they learned a little bit about how difficult it was, and how good. We complain sometimes in America, and there's a lot to be done, no question. But the fact of the matter is, we have it pretty good. And I think what I wanted our troops, if I had 300 troops, probably 200 of them were under 23 or 4. I wanted them to see another culture and just what it was like outside of the United States, and they got a chance to see that.
Okay. What about recreation over there in Egypt? What do you guys do? And I don't know how much downtime you had, but any that you had, what did you do with it?
So, being in the Air Force, we built a weight room.
Okay.
And we built an entertainment room. So I'm not much into the gaming stuff, but for the kids for the young troops we had some of that in there, whatever. We were able to buy the latest and greatest, and they'd take turns and do that, and they'd be able to lift weights. And we had a full cafeteria, so I think we had one hot meal a day, which was tremendous, especially for the Marines and Army folks that came in there. Other than that, when we had a holiday, we'd have some cookouts, and but of course, like anytime you're deployed, it's 12, 14, 15-hour days. You're there to get a job done. You make some great friends while you're doing it, some great relationships, but it's about the job, and you count the days to come back home. That's never been different in World War I, any battle that we've ever had to today. We treasure our families, and I think sometimes we realize just how important our families are when we're away. While I was away, I had to go in the shower and tell a troop, bare naked in the shower, I need to speak to you, pull him out and get a towel around him and tell him his father's passed away. I had to give away flags to mothers and fathers, and it's part of who we are. We got the full spectrum. I kept telling my troops that we work hard and we play hard. We enjoy it. And I'll tell you what, so I've been, 82 is when I was commissioned. It's 30 plus years. And I just went to San Antonio and saw one of my buddies from Saudi Arabia and who's now in SCS in San Antonio. And the people you meet are the salt of the earth. Of course, everyone has bad apples. In the military, we have some too, no question. But the majority of the folks are there for the right reason, working hard, supporting each other. And those are the kind of people, again, now, and I know we'll get there, but now that I'm outside, I'm in a position of influence, I want to make sure we take care of them, get them in the workforce, and get them some opportunities to be in leadership and management, because they get it. They know what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what year was Egypt? I'm sorry. What year were you in Egypt?
Late 90s.
Okay. So what year did you get out? I'm sorry.
90. 82 is when I got in, so it would have been 97, 98-ish.
Okay. So you were commander of you said the engineering corps? The Air Force engineering corps?
Here, yes.
At Air Force?
For Wright-Patterson Air Force
Right,
Base.
that's what I meant, yeah. At Wright-Pat. So can you maybe just give me a little brief description of what that kind of entailed?
Yeah, I had about, I don't know, maybe 200, probably half and half, maybe 200 civilians, 200 military, 250 to take care of the operation and maintenance from a physical perspective of the base. So heating, air conditioning, snow removal, painting, renovations, all that fell under, in one aspect or another, fell under me and my peers and my troops. So right now, when we have the snowfalls, people say, it's funny because I just had someone say they closed Wright-Pat last week because of a snowfall that wasn't that significant. But it's good to keep in contact, which I do, because the difference today from when I was there, I would have never closed the base on that. But today they don't have the money to. We used to get our snow removal folks in at like 3 in the morning, and they would plow and get everything ready to open the base at 7. But a good half of those or more, depending on the deployments, are civilians, and that costs overtime. We don't have the money to do it. So when someone says, well, we used to do something, or the base used to look better, a lot of that is just we don't have the funds today, and they keep cutting back with sequestration to do the kind of things that we could do in the past. And that goes, so when you talk about not closing down the base because you can't make it safe for travel, that goes directly to the mission and what we're doing and how we're supporting. You know, we're developing the F-35. People are depending on us to get that fighter out and operational, and we do the majority of that work right here on base. A day, 2-day delay, probably not a big deal. Could be though. I mean, those are kind of things that people don't see when we talk about automatic sequestration cuts that don't take into account just what the priorities are and what we need to do to support the warfighters over wherever, not just in a desert, excuse me, wherever they may be. We've got to keep that at the forefront, and you and I get that because we've done it, we've been there. But unfortunately, a lot of our politicians don't get it, and they play games with this, and that's the wrong thing to do.
Right. Okay. So, what rank did you get out at?
Major.
Right. Okay. So, did you think there was a big difference between maybe your time as a major and your time as a second lieutenant? Could you tell the difference? I mean, did you like one better than the other?
Huge. As second lieutenant, you're not accountable for anything.
Right.
So you can do anything. As you start going through the ranks, though, you have to start picking up authority and responsibility, and one goes with the other. So you can't mess up without being accountable for it. Something that the society needs to learn a little bit more. You got to be accountable for your actions. So, and as you go up, you get more people under your responsibility, and so as a second lieutenant, when I was in Los Angeles, I'd go to work. Great job at the shuttle. Then I come back and see if I want to go to the beach over the weekend, or I want to go out and, Hollywood and play. And, but as you mature and as you grow through the ranks, by the time you're a major and you're a commander of, I had 500 troops I was a commander of, there'd be a guy that got a DWI, my first shirt would have to work with me on. There's a wife whose husband is deployed that we'd have to help with medical situation. I mean, I think what happens is as you progress, it's not about me, it's about us. And it's something that a good leader not only takes on but enjoys taking it on. I love being a commander. And I welcome the opportunities. Was it difficult to give a flag to someone that lost their spouse or their son? I mean, the toughest thing that I've had to do was not break up and cry when I'm giving a flag to somebody like that. But it's important. You need to do it. You need to honor those people, and you'll learn that. And the key is you pass it on to the troops that are going to follow. So when I was a captain, I passed it on to a lieutenant, a major. I passed it on to the first lieutenant. And so I got out as a squadron commander major. Things just in my life with my kids being in Los Angeles, maybe in Ohio, it was a good opportunity. But here's the other part of that is you never ever lose service. People ask me today, so I don't mean to step ahead of you,
No, you're fine.
but they ask me why I got into politics. It's the same reason I got into the service. It's about service, about giving back, about doing something bigger than yourself. In the military, it was easy to define. But when you get out, it's not so easy to figure out how you can do that. And so, excuse me, you see a lot of military members, ex-military members, as Cub Scout leaders, Girl Scout leaders, going to the senior center, helping with autism, whatever, but it's tough to figure out where you can make the biggest difference and still do something to make sure that you're giving back, because that's what we're all here for, I believe. And I just talked to you personally about, we got a function here at Wright State next week, the week after, what I call dining out, and they asked me to be a guest speaker. That's going to be the theme of my speaking, is you're always preparing yourself today as a cadet, as a second lieutenant, as an airman first class for tomorrow, as a senior master sergeant, as a major, and for the years after that, as a CEO, as a manager of a plant, as a elected official, how you can make a difference and influence people the way that they should be influenced. Give them what they need and keep our society doing what it's always done best, and where we're losing touch with what's important to us, as we get, we have all these issues with, the budget, the federal budget, and with immigration and race relations. I mean, in the military, it's funny, I say in the military, I didn't care. I'm a strong Republican, but I didn't care if that person next to me was a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, if he was a first generation Mexican. I didn't give a crap with that person as long as they did their job, as long as they covered my flank and I covered theirs. And you learn something in the military about doing it. And I think you can learn that as a youngster in Boy Scout and Girl Scout, about teamwork. I was just at an event this week as a state rep. It was the Lego Challenge. And you see these young kids, first grade through high school, putting together, programming Legos and robots, but doing things to help the other team, and playing fair and connecting and the teamwork, and you realize that's what you get in the military. And the things, so when I talked to you about giving back, I talked to some of these parents that are coaches of this thing, and they don't have to be rocket scientists, although many are, because we got research labs right here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But they don't have to. They just have to guide these kids in the right direction. They're smart enough to figure it out. And one of the other areas we're hurting in the States, I think, and I hope I'm staying along the theme.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
But one of the other things that we have a problem with is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and we keep lowering our standards, and other countries are way up here. And when I went to this robotics function this weekend, you see our kids getting in, and our young girls getting interested in robotics and technology. And that's what we need to keep doing. But it doesn't happen because of the kids. It happens because of the parents and the coaches and the sponsors who understand we're deficient. And I'll tell you, the levels, all of those folks that were out there this week, and I'm talking thousands of folks at Wright State University, all of them have another job, a primary job. They were doing this as a secondary contribution, again, helping society, helping kids, helping us to regain the stature that we had once as we were the best in everything. Who knows if we'll ever get there, but we've got to try and make sure that we never have to depend on another country to give us our rocket scientists, just like our oil and fuel. We have the wherewithal here. We just got to get our house back in order. And I see so many people like you, and like the center here at Wright State, the Veteran and Military Center, and folks here that have that vision. They see what they want to do, and they grew up understanding what was right and what was wrong. And it's not as gray as a lot of people want to make it to be. And we all have to come back and figure out how we can help out getting it back into shape from whatever our perspective is, our expertise. In mine, it happens to be politics. Someone else, it will be, like I said, a Boy Scout leader, a Little League coach, whatever it takes. You know, we need to make a difference. And that's where I think the military, and starting in the Boy Scouts and whatnot, Girl Scouts, but the military makes a difference, and we get some amazing leaders. And that's why when I talk to some of my peers, I said, have you ever thought about getting into local politics? Because you know, we can make a difference in local politics, and you see it happening more and more at the local level, but you also see at Congress and in the Senate we get fewer and fewer military members up there, and we need to let them know that we can get you there. So I'm one of those, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
That's great. You said you had an early out. You had an early retirement.
Yes.
How many years did you have then?
15.
15, and they were just offering early retirement because they were trying to downsize?
Yeah, you know, it was very funny because I always saw myself as a 30-year military member. But when I was in Saudi Arabia, my wife left me, took the kids to Los Angeles, which happens to probably the majority of us. I mean, it's a tough life. And there's no fault. It's not her fault. It's not my fault. It's just a tough life. And she had enough, left me, and moved the kids, my 2 daughters, back to California. And I was trying to figure out how I could be more of an influence on those girls, besides getting them for a month and a half in the summer and a week in Christmas, being where I'm located and keeping my career. And closing on a 15-year point, I was a commander at Wright Pat. I was supposed to go to Hanscom and be a group commander on elevation. And the squadron, or the MSS Mission Support Commander, let me know that, hey, your AFSC is eligible for an early out. And I never thought I'd do it, but I looked into it, and I just thought this is a way to make a difference for my kids. So I hated leaving the military, and I miss it so much. But here's the interesting thing. I got out. I stayed at Wright-Patterson, or in the area. I started working at University of Dayton. I got into politics. I was the mayor of Beaver Creek, just outside of the base. So I kept working closely with the base. I became a commissioner, kept working closely with the base. Now I'm a state rep, and I am the co-chair of the state military veteran and public safety committee. So I'm still very well connected with the base, and continue to work to make sure our veterans are taken care of as they're done. And we have so many opportunities, but sometimes it's workforce training with the universities, working all that. So again, that's my way, and that's my little niche, sweet spot, if you will, of giving back to the military, taking care of our troops. Plus the active duty military, coming and talking to the ROTC kids here at Wright State and at University of Dayton, and being a role model, having them come there and to see. My theme's always going to be that you're preparing today for what you don't know you're going to be doing in the future. And I couldn't have a better example than myself. If when I was going through high school and then ROTC at Auburn, if someone would have said I would be a state rep or mayor of a 40,000 person city, I would have said, man, you're smoking weed. You are out there. But you never know what course you take to get to where you're going. But all you can do is prepare yourself. And so in being in the military, they force feed you to prepare yourself. When I got to be a commander, I had no backup. I couldn't say, no, I don't want to have a commander's call. I had to learn how to do that and how to do it right. But when you're in college and you're thinking about that, if I can get people to the State House so they can see what I do, and then maybe in the back of the mind they'll plant that and they'll say, you know, when I'm done with the military, I might like to do something like that. Others, of course, will say, I want to never have anything to do with politics, but that's okay. They'll figure something else out. But we need to keep the military members, those people that do the right thing for the right reasons, we need to keep putting them in places and helping them advance when they're done in the places that influence the rest of the community. Because, you know, outside of first responders, firefighters, and police officers, there aren't any other people out there that are willing to put their life on the line for what they think is important. And that's you and me. And the folks out here.
Yeah, that's great. So now we'll kind of go into right after you said you got a job. Well, actually, I want to back up for a second. You said you retired. What was that? Anything going through your head at the time?
It was tough. As I stated earlier, I had always thought of myself as a 30-year man. I was going to be at least an '06, maybe '07, depending on, that's a lot of that's timing, where you are and who you are. But certainly '06 was in my, I was going to group commander, and from there I would have went to wing commander, hopefully and probably. So I had it all laid out, but there was always something. And we got to remember this with our troops, especially since it's so difficult to have families in the military. It was always tugging at me how I was influencing my daughters and if I was doing the right thing, and how I could do better, other than, like I said, 2 months summer and a month and a half in the summer and a week in Christmas break. And so when this opportunity came for an early out, I wasn't serious about it, but I thought I owed it to myself to look into it. And within 30 days, I was signing papers and getting out. And it just was the right thing to do, because I still had a retirement, not quite full, but 15-year retirement. So it took care of me and my family for my future. But and the bad side was I was not going to be active duty, but the good side was that I was going to be able to start a new career, a 15-year point, which is a little younger, a little more marketable. So it was bad and good, but I so missed, it was just that tug on me, on my family, to get out. I got out, turned out being the right thing to do. I got a good job at UD. My 2 daughters ended up moving here with me, ended up high school here. Both went to University of Dayton. I got free tuition because I was a member there. Yeah, it's a Catholic school, private school. It's very expensive. But it was still close to right path. So actually, for me, it was the best of all worlds. They knew me here. I knew every wing commander that came through here. I get to be good friends with, I joke sometimes that my Wright-Patterson being such a big base, we'd have big functions here, and my troops would make the little name tags at the parking spots for all the generals and congressmen, and I joke a lot that my guys would be in charge of doing that, and then fast forward a few years, they're making my name's on that, right? But you learn how everyone is important on an Air Force base, well, military base, let me say, and you appreciate that more than I think any other elected officials at any other level would know. I mean, so they talk to, excuse me, the colonel or the general, but they don't understand, like I understand, just how the airman, the private, prompts them up, and what their job does to take care of the next level, take care of the next. It's all team event. So I hated missing that, but yet I still got the best of all worlds to some extent, and being so close and being so supportive of the Air Force Base here. So it was a rude awakening. Although I enjoyed working at UD, I said, University of Dayton, that is, I said, as a commander in a military, a squadron commander, the colonels were my bosses and generals. But what I realized was, no matter where you go, when I was at the university, I thought it would be nirvana, but you still have the provosts and the deans and the brothers and the priests. There's always a bureaucracy, a pecking order there, and you just got to figure out where your role, formal and informal, but where your role is on that. So the military helped me greatly with that as well, to understand how things work and how you connect with people. So it was a great transition, although I've always missed the military. Being right here, it's made it easy.
Right. That's great. So is there anything else about maybe after you got out? I know we kind of covered it, but you did UD and then you went straight into politics as... Do you want to kind of talk about that at all?
Yeah,
Transition.
I had 3 years or so at the University of Dayton, and it's really interesting because your body clock tells you as a military member, 3-ish, 4 years, it's time to move on. Right. Because we've done that our whole life, and in my case, as a dependent, I've done that my whole life. So 3 years into it, I realized I wasn't going to be in the military anymore, and I talked to my wife about it. I've given to my country. I want to give to my community now. So she joked she thought I was going to get on like a highway cleanup crew with her. But I got a campaign manager, and well, first I got on a committee, a Board of Zoning Appeal for the city, and then I said I realized that I have a lot to offer. And I decided to run for city council. In my community, different than most communities, even in Ohio, you don't run for mayor. There's 7 elected officials in the community, and at every 2 years, either 4 are up for renewal or 3, and whoever gets the most votes is the mayor, second most votes is the vice mayor. So I just worked my tail off. I'll never forget there were 7 people running for 3 slots. I thought I had a good shot at number 3. I thought if things went real well, I could get 2, vice mayor, and if things didn't go so well, I'd just get barely knocked off. I'd be number 4. I busted my tail again. What you learn in the military, I busted my tail and I ended up getting the most votes, and I was a mayor.
Yeah.
And it was a whole lot being a squadron commander. I enjoyed it a lot. And a couple of years after I was the mayor, the next level, the county, old timer retired, and I was asked to run for that, and I did, and I won that, and did that for 2 terms, 8 years, and enjoyed that. And then my kids were out of school finally, and it was a good time for me to go to the next level, so I ran for the state. I won my first run for 13, and served my first term, just finished it up, and ran again this past October, November 1, so I'm in my second term of 4 2-year terms. And like I said, I am now vice chair for the military veteran and public safety committee, which gives me an opportunity to help military veterans, not just in my district, but throughout the state of Ohio, which is a sweet spot for me. It makes me feel good. It gives me the energy to wake up every morning and say, I'm going to do this. I'm also on the finance committee, aerospace. I'm the chair of the Aerospace Aviation and Technology Committee, which is based on my background in the military.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of, as a second termer, I've got a lot of things coming together to give me a little bit of credibility to get a few things done to help the military veteran, to help the military veteran here at Wright State, say to get credits for what they've done in the military. Say an electrician in the military shouldn't have to start from ground zero. They know a lot.
Right.
So we're doing much better in the state of Ohio, and I think we're going to lead the country in giving college credits for either 2-year degrees or 4-year degrees. Get people started. Nursing, so nursing techs in the military, get them to where, all they've done, give them credit for doing that. Automobile mechanics, they've worked on big trucks in Iraq. How different is that than probably a lot more difficult than doing it in Cleveland, so we give them credit, right? So doing those kind of things in higher eds to help our troops coming back from war, and I'm not just talking about Iraq and Afghanistan, I'm talking about Vietnam veterans as well. Helping them to figure out their place as they assimilate into society, and doing the minimum we should do as a country to help them get their feet on the ground, and they have so much to offer. Sometimes they don't even know it. Also helping the VA system, the hospital system, to make sure, again, that's a federal endeavor, but I can still work with our feds to make sure that, somebody is just getting the runaround. Make sure that people at the state understand and at the feds understand that we got to do better. And it's very easy in my position to at least get someone to look at, retired Sergeant so-and-so who's been put off for so many months. Now I'll tell you, the VA has done much better job since the incidents a year ago or so. But we can always do better. We always have to be looking out for our vets. So training them, helping them to get a job, this post-traumatic stress, it's something the medical community really can't put a finger on. How do we deal with that? How do we help people? And how do we help their spouses and their kids? There's so much we can do. And I feel like that's my sweet spot, and I feel like a lot of my peers feel the same way, and we can get them, even if they're not into politics, if they're not elected officials, we can figure out a way to help those people that have so much to give help the people that need some help right now. Just it's not a handout; it's a hand up, as they say. Just let's get them back on track so they can feel confident and get back and doing something that they can do and they can do productively.
Okay, great. So I know you kind of already talked about it too, but is what kind of life, maybe just give me one good, life lesson that would sum up what you kind of maybe got out of the military or learned from it. I know you grew up with it your whole life, but
I'll tell you a good example. This amazes me. It almost sounds like you make it up, but you don't. In the military, it's a team. And even if you're an officer, high ranking, and and you got to keep the discipline, and you got to keep the chain of command, all that, no question. But still a team. And so there was when I was running the first time for the state office, I had a billboard, and it said, vote for Rick, whatever, great guy, and it was in a good location. And so I get a call first I got an email out of the blue asking if this is the same Rick Perales that was a squadron commander at Wright-Patterson in this time frame. If so, I was one of your troops. And so, of course, I wrote back and I said, yeah, it is. I said, who is this? Now, again, I had 500 troops, so I'm not going to remember it. I was very good at it, but I can't remember, especially after a decade, right? I don't remember them all. So this guy wrote me, and he said that you won't remember me, and he said, but we were in a exercise, and you were the commander, and we had, I don't have all the details, but something like we were somewhere on a TDY training, and we had a goal, an objective, and we accomplished it, the troops did, and so somehow I was able to get them into a facility that they could get a hot shower and a meal, right? And so deployments, we're very, very particular about exactly what you bring in your bags. You got to have, 7 pairs of underwear. Not 6, not 8, 7. We're very, very particular, for good reason about that. Well, apparently this young man, airman, forgot his towel. And so, I don't know how it happened, but he said he and I were sitting in the locker room or the shower room across from each other, and he forgot his towel, and I questioned him about it, and he said, I didn't bring it, sir, and I threw him my towel. Now, I don't recall this, right? He's telling me, I threw him my towel, and instead of ringing him up and, demerits and whatever we could do, I threw it to him. I said, you'll never forget that again, will you? And he said, no, sir. And for me, it was a learning moment, and there was no reason to beat up on this kid, right? I forgot about it right after that. This guy carried it with him for all those years, and he remembered, and it was special to him. And as a matter of fact, he ended up writing a letter about my leadership skills to the paper that was posted that helped me win my race. It just all fits together that leadership is something that you evolve, you learn. Yeah, you have maybe you have inherent skills on that, but you're always evolving and learning from leaders that are learning right and wrong from leaders higher up than you. And sometimes it's like parenting. You do something right, you don't even know it. It's like you stumble. I did the right move then, and it was inherent. It was just who I am. But for that kid, I guarantee you, he never ever forgot whatever he needed in his deployment bag for the rest of his years in the military. And it made him, that little act made him understand a little bit about leadership and being prepared, so much so that he felt obligated to call me or write me, and then later he called me, and I said, dude, that's a great story. Would you mind writing it? Yeah. And he did. And I've had other stories like that. So just the breeding ground, the training to lead. Now, I'll tell you, I'm sure I made a lot of other mistakes. Maybe I was too lax or too hard on other things. But there are times, and I get young troops that write me or call me back and say, thank you for your leadership. And what an opportunity as a 30-year-old to be able to lead 500 troops, or 35, whatever it was back then, a long time ago. So the opportunities you get in the military are second to none, and you get to learn from great leaders, and what the military does so well is, as a young major, I had a first shirt. And that first shirt kept me out of trouble, and I realized that. So they set up an environment where if you want to lead and you want to win, you can do that. But if you don't take advantage of what the supporting structure is, you're going to fall. Many do. So I remember that, and I tell that story often about, always being kind and respectful and doing the right thing. And, sometimes you never hear about it again. Sometimes, like in that situation, it comes back, and it comes back, and in this case, it was very positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So kind of to wrap it up, is there any kind of message maybe you want to leave for anybody who may watch this at the Library of Congress or future generations of military or anything?
Yes, I'll tell you what, here's my theme, and I said it previously. You're always preparing today for tomorrow and for the out years and for what you may be. You never know the opportunities you're going to get. In the military, you have so many chances, whether you're enlisted or an officer, it doesn't matter. And my theme when I talk to the ROTC folks in 2 weeks is the theme I talk to everybody about. You have a responsibility to give back. And today you're training for how you're going to give back tomorrow and in the out years. And you got to take that seriously. For instance, when you're in college, you have an easy elective. You could take a basket weaving, or you could take speech. You take the tough subjects so that you're preparing yourself better and you're able to communicate, because you could be the best leader in the world. But if you can't communicate, it doesn't matter. So you take care and you figure out where you're weak and where you want to improve, and you make those improvements. And a lot of people say to me, I can't get up in front of a crowd and talk. And I said, the hell you can. You just got to prepare yourself for it. And that you got Toastmasters, you got opportunities. I'll tell you, when I was a mayor, and even before that, when I got to be mayor, I decided if I'm going to be in politics, I will never turn down an opportunity to talk to a group unless it just can't happen because of logistics, right? I've never turned it down. So it would be easier to say no, but if I say yes, I got to prepare, I got to do the legwork, I got to do the investigation, research, so that I'm ready to do that. And every time you do that, you get better at it. And that's why I tell folks. And speaking is just one aspect of it, right? But what I keep telling folks is, today you might want, your goal may be to want to be a lieutenant colonel or a chief master sergeant, which are lofty goals. There's a good. But by the time you become that major or that tech sergeant, you may see some other opportunities out there. And all that time between, you could be preparing yourself. So it's hard for people to imagine. But I like to throw myself out there as a case in point of somebody that didn't see where I'd be. And because the Air Force gave me good training, I was able to be effective at what I'm doing today. So no matter where you are, you got to be looking about how you can make yourself better for eventually how you can affect people and make a difference either in the military or in our community, in our state, in our country, in our world. And we can do that. The people right here, those two ladies out there that served in the Army and the Air Force, they can be great leaders. We just got to mentor them to get there. So prepare yourself, and for the senior people, mentor the youth to get there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Rick, and thanks for doing the interview, and thanks for your service.
My pleasure. Thank you for your service.